Are exams putting kids under too much pressure? 0207 862 2222 is the number to give us a call. The Education Secretary thinks that schools must stop focusing solely on exam results and spend more time making pupils feel like they are well-rounded members of society. Now, Bridget Phillipson made those comments yesterday and warned that schools are doomed to fail if they are only concentrating on achieving top exam results. Do you think she's right on this, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a fan of exams. You've got to test pupils, adults in later life in some way, and an exam is one way of doing it to see how well they're doing, how you can encourage them, who's attained what. I want doctors and engineers to pass exams before they're treating me or cross their bridges. But I think with kids in schools, it's something about the whole. It shouldn't be the entire pressure just to pass exams, because you might be good at arts but not very good at sciences, or the other way around. Well, that's fine. You don't have to do really well on everything. And you want people to be rounded individuals. You want them to come out and, there's an old saying that in degrees, people who get a first-class degree will go into teaching, and those who get a second-class degree will be employed by those who get a third-class degree, because those third-class degree people might just be incredibly creative and entrepreneurial and sparky. So yeah, she's right. We've got to focus on the entire kid. Every child matters, and everything about that kid matters, rather than just saying it's a sausage factory and you produce, exam sausages at the end. Some will succeed and others you'll chuck in the bin. Life shouldn't be like that.
Even if you were looking at just the academics, Lynn, some students are just not very good at exams, incredibly bright, could absorb a textbook in a night, but just when it comes to the pressure of sitting down and focusing their brain for an hour, 2 hours, some exams are longer than that. I mean, incredible amounts of time. It's just not their bag. And so is it actually a good judge on whether somebody is good on the subject?
Well, I'm not surprised at these increased statistics, for the simple fact that as a result of short video, social media, the concentration span of children and adults has massively decreased. But, and I echo some of the things that you said. I think it's important that now that we've advanced, to tailor-make things for people that are suited to what tests them, and that's not always exams. However, the next point of her saying, let's spend more time on making pupils feel like they belong, I'm going to be honest, it sounds very airy-fairy to me. And I think we're going towards this area where we're mollycoddling children to not realise the stress of life. Life is stressful. You're going to be under pressure. You're going to have to fight to have a job. You need to beat people in interviews. And if you want to climb the ladder, you will have to be used to pressure. So this idea, we don't want the children to feel pressure. No.
I was actually,
let's prepare them for the pressure.
Kevin, I was actually quite surprised by one of the statistics I read. It said almost 60% of 8 to 16-year-olds' main worries are related to schoolwork and exams. And that stood out to me, not because, oh my goodness, 60% are worried about exams. Why is it not 100%? I mean, when you're 8 to 16 years old, surely we pray and hope that the only stress in your life and worry in your life is exams and schoolwork.
Yeah,
there should be nothing else going on that's worrying you.
Yeah, but sadly, there will be issues at home. There'll be issues with friends and
but
wider
surely that's
family.
An aim
the
rather than something to worry about.
But you do want some pressure, and you want kids to grow up to be resilient. But I tell you, when I was a parent, I wanted my kids to go to school happy and come back happy, because then that made me happy, and they actually learned better when they were happy. And I think that's the belonging. It's where you feel there are opportunities for you. The school is about you.
But you have to have some sort of measure, though, surely. Yeah. There has to be some way for an employer to say, OK, this person was good at maths, this person was good at English, this person wasn't so good at that, this person's clearly not very good under pressure, not good at exams, maybe we could put them somewhere else. Surely there has to be some sort of identifying.
I think we're giving children also, we're doing children a disservice by giving them too much choice as well. Even when it comes to parenting style, when it comes to TikTok, they're going on and they're watching people say, you take back your life, don't listen to authority, don't listen to parents, exams are not for you. And we're drumming up this whole anxiety authority against authority, against the parent, against the teacher, where later on in life it's going to massively disadvantage them.
I think what you want children to grow into adults who are strong, independent, and,
Exactly.
and challenge. You don't want them just to, you say jump, they shout how high. You want them to sometimes say why. And exams are a guide, but as somebody who used to hire people, and I wasn't employing them directly, but I was recommending them for the jobs. They got jobs. Exams didn't tell you the whole story.
Oh, it doesn't.
You wanted the personality and who could communicate and get along with other people.
So
there's a lot of other things. If you just rely on exams as an employer, you'll fail.
In conjunction with exams in schools, because we're not talking about the eradication of exams in general.
Yeah.
What other things can we do, or what can we do in order to be able to measure the other elements of a child's personality and characteristics so we can see that child in the round when we look at their CV?
I think public speaking. I think being able to describe something. So in my first degree, I had to have a combination of exams, coursework, but also there was a lot of presentations. And that allowed me, I'm probably not the greatest at coursework, if I'm honest. I'm good at exams and I'm good at presentations. And I think if there will be many young people that are very charismatic and good with their hands and good with their voices and speaking, but not so fantastic at writing, a presentation is a brilliant way for them to, relay what they've learned.
That's right. You don't want to just test with exams. You want to do it with projects.
You want to do mixed.
Presentations.
Yeah.
But you want to do sport, music, public speaking.
But I think we've done
whatever.
too much of that.
You want to do it with some community work. You could probably tell how good a school is or how the pupil is doing by absence levels. And if the kid, unless they are,
which we have a real issue with. 0207 862 2222 is the number for this. Are we putting too much pressure on children when it comes to exams? Another thing I thought about when I was looking into this and researching, when I was at school, it was a time when I was absorbing the most amount of information. I look back now, let's say I was taken back into a classroom. I didn't have all the stresses of life as you do as a 38-year-old woman, and I was just allowed to learn. I still don't think I could absorb the amount of information that I did when I was that age. Between the ages of 8 and 16, your brain is a sponge. So shouldn't we be putting something in place to encourage these children to focus on their education, to focus on their learning? It is the only important thing at that point.
Yeah, well, look, as much as you can do. And if they feel they belong in the school, they're more likely to do that. I mean, for instance, I'd like to see every kid that wants, and I would encourage them to do, learn an instrument. I never did it as a kid.
I did the recorder. What happened to that?
Oh well, I was
no one got rich off of playing the recorder.
You don't hear that in chart music much.
As somebody who
the
had
top 10's really missing.
As somebody who had kids who learned the violin, I know how I suffered as they practiced. But nevertheless, it is great, and I'd like all kids rather than just those kids who go to private schools or have middle class or working class families with the money and the wherewithal to get them to learn.
I'd like to see
all
them in
those
the job
kids who
earlier.
can benefit from it.
I would like to see, because the problem we're finding with generic education is many young people are seeing success stories, and it had nothing to do with English, maths, Pythagoras theory and all those things. So it's hugely demotivating to see these people now on, whether it's social media or in entertainment, or these highfalutin business individuals who said, well, I never went to school, I dropped out. So it's like, why am I staying in school to be taught by a person that's not even that wealthy, and I want to be wealthy? Loads of children, I think if we get them into the workplace, maybe year 9, year 8, to experience the environment of their chosen field, that would be better, more vocational, hands-on.
Well, revive the careers service, I mean, it went to rack and ruin in recent years.
The other problem when it comes to exams is not just the pressure that we put on kids. I think it's also the pressure that we put on schools, because schools are judged by their exam results, and that is then passed on to the children. Perhaps actually it's society's fault. It's parents' fault. It's my fault. It's my fault because I want my child to go to a school which has great exam results. I'm putting pressure on that school to get exam results. They're putting the pressure on the kids. And maybe it's our fault then. Actually,
you have to aim for greatness in anything you do, though. Like you're saying this, but let's say, for example, we don't put the pressure, and the school says, we're fantastic. We let everyone feel like they belong, but everyone's got an E. Brilliant.
Yeah, but
you're not going to be impressed. You don't want your child to have an E and an F. And although I had an E in maths, I'm not going to lie to you. But you don't want that.
The grading system of schools differs around the UK, but in England you have Ofsted, and everyone would rather their kids, I suspect, goes to an outstanding, excellent school rather than one that's failing. And I've had experience of them both, unfortunately, both ends of the spectrum. But it's how you rate a school. And there's a whole, the Reading head who took a life, big issues around that. But you really want to look at the value added, because there'll be some schools in nicely comfortable middle-class areas that all the kids will do well. Then there'll be other areas where incredibly challenge deprived, and kids...
Based on their environment.
Yeah, and they can be taken up even higher. Some schools are absolutely brilliant
at it. They don't have money for tutors.
Yeah.
The wealthy areas have money for tutors.
Well, that sounds like the parents need to start looking at a more rounded view of the schools, and maybe that'll be passed on. Sharon from Lincolnshire, what's your view? Do we put on too much pressure onto our young people?
Yes, I think we do, Storm, because I think our children have an awful lot of pressure. In my day, we didn't have social media. We didn't have pressure from other pupils into pushing us into things we didn't want to do. And the exams are far too... you need an awful lot of information to pass the exams for children these days. In my days, it was just these GCSEs. But now there's a lot more other exams that the children have to take before they get their results.
The standards do seem to have gone up. You have to have higher grades to get into certain universities. You have to have more GCSEs and more A levels or standard grades and higher, wherever you are in the country and whatever you're taking. I do get that. The social media element is definitely something that we've been missing in this discussion. It's a very interesting element, along with the pressures of COVID and the mental health issues that come as a consequence of that. I'm sure Lynn will say social media is going to be a part of their life now forever, so they'll just have to get used to that, as well as the added pressure. It's unfortunate but true. But because of COVID, do we need to take this generation of young people's mental health more into consideration?
I think we should take it into consideration more generally, but we have to make kids more resilient
as
well. I really genuinely believe that. You've got to accept there are problems, and it's how do you answer them.
Sharon, thank you for your call. Kevin from Manchester, another Kevin. What's your thoughts on this?
What I was trying to say to you was to your colleague who I phoned and spoke to, was that I am 60-odd years of age, and basically I was born with asthma as a child. They didn't know what stresses I could cope with, so we didn't do any schoolwork. And when it comes to the 11 plus, I don't know if you know anything about the 11 plus, Storm, but back in them days, you had to do the 11 plus to see where you was within the schools. So that would take you on to, if you went on to, say, a grammar school or something like that. Well, I couldn't have done the 11 plus because I had nothing to. I didn't study. The only thing it made us do was read and write.
And then what impact do you think that's had on you?
Well, at first it had a major impact, but I actually was lucky enough to go to a different boarding school where I was reassessed. And they put me into a system where I actually managed to get exams. I've got 5 A levels and 8 O levels. Amazing.
And what was the difference then? They learnt that you could be put under pressure. Why all of a sudden did they allow you to go take the exams?
Because the school approach was completely different. We're being a specialist school for children with needs.
It's interesting, and this might be what Bridget Phillipson's trying to get at, actually, that the education system the way it is at the moment is too narrow, and it focuses on what the majority maybe can deal with, but actually there's many, many pupils, and maybe an increasing number, that fall outside that bell curve and will benefit from different methods of teaching, which you clearly have, Kevin. What was the difference in approach, do you mind me asking?
Because they looked at the individual child. So in my school, you'd have people who had epileptic fits, you had people who were in wheelchairs, you had people who permanently in bed, but they still were allowed to do exams. But instead of doing 7 or 8 exams, they just let them do the ones they wanted to do, and also the ones which would help them in the future, like maths, like English, and not force them to do things which silly, like what's the point of doing geography if you're not going to be say, travel agent or
maybe
something like
even
that.
not having to do 7 in 1 week. 'Cause I remember GCSE week was every morning
Yeah.
you'd wake up and think, oh, what's the challenge today?
Kevin, did you have more teachers in your school, and they weren't all just big classes of 30 or more?
Being a disabled, there were known as convalescent schools back then. It was a place called West Kirby on the Merseyside. And what was so brilliant about it was the class sizes were smaller.
It's key.
And that gave the chance of your teacher to pick up on you and see where you're at. Prime example would be, we had a student in my class, and he was maths, he could read maths. He was so brilliant at maths, but every other like history and geography, they were boring to him, so he never concentrated. I remember once he did an history exam, and my history teacher showed, it was only a mock, because we used to do mocks as well to get us used to doing exams.
Okay.
And she showed us the paper, and he wrote it all upside down and back to front.
Kevin, do you know what? It sounds like your school was absolutely amazing and really focused on the strengths of the pupils rather than making them fit into what a lot of people consider to be a cookie cutter system. Kevin, thank you very much for sharing your story with us. We are going to have to move on later.